all this work over in Toronto, and we've been doing this rotation. I kind of missed the boat, and then it came up to, I'm teaching this today. And so last Sunday, we're at church, and I'm just sitting there, and Mark's giving his message. We're about to have worship, and God just shows up. You're sitting at the dinner table, and you're super hungry, and your mom or dad show up, and they give you this plate of food, and you're like, sweet, I'm excited. So I'm sitting there, and I just have this message, and so I just take out my book, and I just write it all down, and I'm just like, all right, this is easy. I've got this, I'm prepared. Anyways, well, Sunday is coming. Wednesday's coming. I teach on Wednesday night as well. And so, like, Monday, Tuesday, I'm like, what are we going to do for youth? We've been doing all this kind of stuff. It's been pretty awesome. We've got this curriculum, but I'm not sure. What do you want? I was like, well, I could save this for Wednesday, or I could teach on this now, and maybe he'll show up and give me something. So anyway, I teach on it on Wednesday, and youth group was great. It was pretty amazing. And so the rest of this time, I'm like, well, what am I going to do Sunday? Well, last night we had this, I'll get into it later, but we had this kind of service. And so we're in the middle of this service, and actually my mom and dad, they're speaking some words of encouragement in this girl's life. And I look at her shirt, and she's got a lion on her shirt, right? And God is just like, there you go, that's it. And I'm like, oh man, are you kidding me? I know that means absolutely nothing to you, but it was very, very, meant a whole lot to me. And so I'm freaking out in my brain. I'm like, I'm not ready. I can't do this. You're lying to me. Lying, get it. So I'm sitting over in the other room, and I'm going over, I'm pouring over this, I'm just writing all my notes down, I'm just going over this, looking this over and over and over and over, and it's like 5:08, literally 5:08, because I looked at the clock, because I wanted to have this conversation with you, and I'm like, are you sure? I can come up with something else easy. I've got 20 minutes, that's so much time for me. And it didn't take real long. I was like, are you sure? He said, yes. Man. I wanted to ask again, but it made no sense because he already said yes. You know what I'm saying? How many of you guys, you hear God says something, you're like, I know that that's you, but I'm not really sure. Are you sure that this is you? Do you know that you're saying what you're saying that you're saying to me? That wasn't confusing. I didn't get lost. So this is what I want to speak on. I've never done this before, so we're just going to go for it. We're going to see where we land. So I had the chance to go to a internet live streaming conference at the Cyril's house. They actually had this. Two amazing people from our church, Whitney and Melissa. They actually went to the conference in person, and we were at the Cyril's and we got to watch it online. You know what's really amazing? Not being packed in a room with 5,000 people. That's amazing. I've never gotten up, gotten coffee, and sat down right after worship for a message. Yeah, I loved it. I had my own room, had a couch. Life was good. So we watched this message, and God he totally changed my life throughout this weekend. Completely he literally threw revelation on me that I'd never experienced before in my life. And when I walked away, I was completely different. Have been ever since. Just haven't been able to get back to it. I probably won't. It's just not going to work. So this is what I want to do for you. Because I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let you guys in on exactly what it is that he spoke on and kind of let you know where we're headed. You guys down? Okay, so bear with me here. Okay, so there are 5 things. There are 5 things in life that change a person. One of them is hate, love, lust, ambition. And the 5th one I'm going to tell you at the end. But remember that there are these 5 things in life that change an individual's life. Now, in this, I'm going to tell you a story about an individual in the Bible who his life was changed so radically that he is known as the only individual to have ever lived and to have ever so fiercely loved God with such burning fire and passion that there was never a single individual ever known about him before in the entire Old Testament. There was never someone in the Old Testament who desired and pursued God in such a way and with such passion and fervor and just delight and everything that God was, that there was never an individual ever again after him in the Old Testament. If you're thinking it's David, it's not. I'm not going to tell you who it is. So, but this is what I thought was really cool, because I'm listening to this guy, and it's just awesome. He's old, and I didn't like him at first. But just the things that he said and just what he threw out there it was so good. So he's just like, you know what? Preaching is outdated, and it's irrelevant. except for when it's relevant and it's actually to the point. See, I don't know if you guys have realized this, but we live in a day and age where, there's Sunday and people go to church and we go and we listen to messages and all that kind of stuff, but God moves a lot bigger than that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is all great and all, but this is just like me as an individual. I just have this chance, this gifting to be able to go and teach and preach and all that kind of stuff. But God's really moving in a different area. Like this church, for example, God desires and He's moving in signs, miracles, and wonders. You know what I'm saying? You guys tracking? So there's a couple things that have happened as a nation, as we are. Who here knows what the Jesus movement is? Yes, old people. Yeah, well, Bobby. Sorry, Curry, you don't count. But anyway, so if you don't know what the Jesus movement is, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to help you out. So later on, like in the 1970s era, there was this, basically, just this huge revival occurred within this particular time frame in 1969. So basically what happened is this guy, David Wilkerson, this guy showed up, okay? This guy was just anointed. He just had this gifting. And for some reason, wherever he went, like people followed. Like thousands of people followed. Like hundreds of thousands of people followed. Like people just got saved left and right. He was going to different churches. He was going to all these different places. And inside of this, all these other people were just going for it, and they were just all loving God. Let me see here. Okay, so this is what happened. In this Jesus movement, the Calvary Church basis began. Inside of this movement, what is it? So basically, he's telling the story of, in a book about this size, yay big, in a book yay big, like a book, like dictionary stacks, really thin pages and all that kind of stuff. Inside of this book, because of this particular movement, that book was an address book, basically. It was a contact book of all the different churches from Mexico border to Canada on the West Coast during this movement. It's a big book. That's a lot of places. Also, inside of this movement, what resulted from this movement is there was not a church, a school, there was not any particular place on the West Coast that did not have some form of person, some type of individual who was witnessing and was evangelizing and who was speaking about the things of God in this particular movement. This movement lasted. Also another huge thing that occurred in this movement. Anybody know who Chuck Smith is? So Chuck Smith, this guy, he would hold baptisms for people, and he would baptize people 10,000 at a time. Just because God's doing all this stuff and He's making all this happen. In the middle of this movement is the YWAM, Youth with a Mission, began, and that's an international, it's international, huge. People go and they just experience God. There's 26,000 missionaries today that go off and do YWAM because of this particular movement. Time magazine said during this time when God was just showing up in the U.S., it lasted from 1969 to 1985. And Time magazine said that of what they could record, there were 25 million people who got saved. No, you can be excited. That's okay. That's 25 million people. I mean, that's way more people. You put a lot of zeros on Ridgecrest and you get there. 6 of them maybe. 25 million people got saved within a span of 16 years. That's more than a million people a year. I'm going to stop because I was going to start thinking about how many there'd be a day, but that doesn't matter. Anyways, so this huge movement happens. And so, what happens after this movement? Because, great things happen and great things come to an end. And so David Wilkerson, at the end of this, he writes a letter. And this particular individual just states this as one of the most critical and most important letters that he has ever read. Now, when he first heard it, it didn't make a lot of sense. But Dave Wilkerson, like the guy who started all this stuff, who lived through it, who experienced, he was the man at the end before he died, wrote this letter. And he said, what we experienced in that moment was not the greatest thing that God's going to do. Everything that we went through then wasn't all that God had set up for us. which is amazing for a guy who lived in it to